Time for people to hate me. Knew it was coming. 2012, we've talked about albums that have all been from deliciously decent to tragically triumphant. It's now for us time to talk to something, or about something that's just bad. Something that was being looked forward to by a lot of people, myself included, kind of hoping that maybe there'd be a return to form with this band. A band that hasn't really stimulated me much throughout the past couple of years, and one that I was hoping that this album would deliver more promise. I hope I was blind. We're here to talk about Dark Adrenaline by Lacuna Coil, their 2012 album that's going to be released on the 24th of January. Lacuna Coil has been a gothic slash metal slash dark alternative band since the latter part of the 1990s, early part of the 2000s. And the first couple of albums are breathtaking. They're fantastic works, but you talk about Karma Code and you talk about Shallow Life, and it really just seems to have gone downhill. They've really embraced more of the dark alternative sound that I've talked about, these bands like, r.e.m and stuff like that. And, it's a simplistic style shift. And it's really not something that's all of that radical of a shift from what they did before. But it's just enough where it almost seems like a landmark move from one side of the coin to the other. And Dark Adrenaline continues this, unfortunately. I listen to this album and I hear a band that almost... They won't admit it themselves. They definitely won't fucking admit it themselves because, let's face it, they're too big for that. They're a band that's really at the crest of their career where a lot of people really enjoy their work. And if you do, more power to you. But this is my opinion and you listen to it. Because I have some damn good points. This is a band that feels to me like they're almost going through an identity crisis. I feel like they've been going through an identity crisis for the past couple of records. At one point, they're trying to be this overly simplistic, radio-friendly alternative metal band. At one point, they're trying to be this really shitty carbon copy of Depeche Mode, only with a harder edge. Another side, they're trying to be the metal band that they once were, with that gothic touch, with that dual male-female vocal crescendo, so to speak. And another one, it's like they're just trying to be groundbreaking, but failing. On one track, they're trying to be Evanescence. One track, they're trying to be Depeche Mode. And then one track, they try and fail to be r.e.m. Dark Adrenaline, for me, will be a record that had a lot of promise because it started off with male vocals instead of Christina. I have nothing against Christina. I think Christina has a very dynamic voice. It's one that she's able to use to her advantage. I have nothing against female singers. As you know, I have covered many of them. It's one of those things, though, that Christina seems to really have the magnitude, where the balance that was present on the first couple of records really aided and made this band not only truly unique, but also very breathtaking, because you could almost hear it as some sort of conversation piece between two people. You could almost hear it as some sort of duality. But instead, in recent memory, it's been more of a domination period, where the male vocals have kind of treaded off into the background. There's a little bit more of a dynamisy here. There's a little bit more of a closer to a balance, but it's still off kilter. This is an album that bored me. It seems really overly done. It's something that's just... They found an idea that worked, and they just continue to do and pull that idea out of their ass, one way or the other. I listened to these tracks and really could see very little that was different about each, with the exception of introductions. But they all seem to break down into the same similar format. There's very little in the way of true, I say, stylistic difference. I mean, yes, I did say this was a band with an identity crisis where they were trying to do a couple of different things. But in reality, it all seems to bear down onto the same idea, the same core thing, whenever it gets down into it, whenever we get to the meat of it, so to speak, whenever you examine it deep down on the most basic of levels. This is an album that I will struggle to speak about because I don't want to just flip out, because it's just almost not even worth it. A lot of promise on this record. There's a lot of promise, but it resembles too much of their recent material for me to even care. It resembles this downward trend that has really happened with Lacuna Coil. Almost like they've pussied their sound out, but pussied being a very poor choice of words, considering it's a stylistic shift that they've decided to embrace. More power to them. More power to them indeed. This album will probably sell. However, for somebody who knew what Lacuna Coil was capable of, and heard what they were able to do, and was spellbound by it, albums up to the Comolis and things like that, it just is kind of disappointing. Trying to accept this album for what it is very difficult, not because of the stylistic shift, but just because it's very difficult to get through this album without feeling engaged. I listen to this album, I don't feel engaged. I feel very distanced from it. I feel as though it's just something that was produced because they wanted to do it. Which is cool. I understand that. That's fine. But pull me in somehow. Grip me. Do something that I'm going to be surprised about. Do something that I'm going to want to tell people about. And then they did that. They covered Losing My Religion by r.e.m. Band that just decided to announce their retirement from music back in September. And they bastardized that song. Now, Lacuna Coil covered a Depeche Mode song a couple years ago, and that was understandable because Depeche Mode is one of their influences. And they did a fairly decent job with that. Losing My Religion, no. Some of you may disagree. Some of you may hate me for what I'm about to say. I don't care, because this is how I feel about it. This is a song that is accented by Michael Stipe's cadence. This is a song that's accented by the low haunting music in the background. It's not something that needs to be ridiculously overproduced. It's not something that needs to be too heavy or too loud. The softness is what grants the effect. It's what grants the atmosphere. This is not something that needs to be taken up vocally. It's something that needs to be done very simply. Lacuna Coil was not able to do that. Lacuna Coil opted to take it to levels that perhaps were unseen. But here's something that I'll tell you. r.e.m did a cover of this song many years ago, and they did it right. They did a very, very excellent cover of this song. Yes, it was heavy. Yes, it didn't have that same stripped-down quality, but they still paid very special mind to Michael Stipe's cadence. And that's one of the most important, if not the most important aspect of that song. Christina ignores that completely. Luckily enough, whenever we hit the chorus, the male vocals, Marco is able to really take care of that and is able to kind of bring it back. But it's too late. It's already severed. One of my favorite r.e.m. songs is Severed because Christina opted to try to take it up to these unforeseen heights, when what she should have done is kept it very calm, kept it very conflicted. This is not a triumphant song. This is not a song that deserves overindulgence. It's not a song that exudes overindulgence. This is a song that embodies conflict. Conflict was not what I heard. This whole album is an example in overindulgence. This album is a classic example of an identity crisis by a band that has made a stylistic shift, but perhaps is also trying to please everybody. In the end, once again, for the third straight album, they refused to please this fan, which is okay. Why? Because that's not their point. That's not what they need to do. They don't need to please me. They have no need. I'm just one person. They're making music for them. However, this album is boring. This album granted me nothing, engaged me in no way, gave me no hearkening to the glory days, which might show my age and might be a stupid reason, but it is a reason. This is also an album that made me sit back and wonder one thing. Why the fuck do people care so much? Why do they care so goddamn much about this band? Is it because seas of women out there are looking up at Christina as a vocal goddess, as hope? There are plenty of vocalists out there that you can use for inspiration, ladies and gentlemen. Angela Gossow from r.e.m. They just released a fantastic album last year. Annette from Nightwish. You could even go back to Tarja. There are plenty out there. This one is just some sort of carbon copy. It has really decayed and fallen from grace. This album only furthers that fall. This album only furthers my rage toward this band. And this album only furthers my disassociation from them. You may disagree. You may hate the comments that I have to say, just as you've hated on comments about the Trivium reviews and others like that. And for that, I accept. However, this genre is not one for discolored and simplistic bullshit. This band more resembles an alternative band than a metal band. I believe it might be time that we place them in the proper section in pop and rock and not in metal. But that's just me. To you guys, some of you at least, this might be the hardest thing you listen to. And if so, there's a whole world to explore. A whole world past this band. One that I highly recommend, considering this world sucks. The end. This is terrible. 6. Maybe. If they're lucky. I'm feeling generous because I'm actually feeling halfway decent today. 6. No, not 666. Just plain old 6. You know what? I've been getting chills for the past week. So fuck that. 5.75. Jesus.